you have to see humanity in each other and that we are all interconnected. And it's when we respect, value, and give space and voice and allow people to voice who they are that we can better work together. But that often means coming together and having those difficult conversations and realizing that, yeah, we will get hurt and people will get upset and people will not understand in the beginning and some may never understand. However, you put yourself and who you are in the forefront and then you made an effort to be better.
This is the Workplace Therapist Show, and of course, I'm your host, Brandon Smith. And the entire purpose of the show, if you haven't been listening recently, we have tightened our purpose, and we are really all about helping you have better conversations and better relationships at work. And so today, our topic fits into that so perfectly. We are going to talk about cross-cultural communication. And so to help us with that, I've got my wonderful guest, Hermence Matsotsa. She's going to help us kind of guide us through this journey. Hermence, I'm so glad to have you on our show today.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure being here today.
Yeah, and I already I've got so many questions.
Great.
Before our show started, she was educating me on a few things. I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have to ask her about that on the show. So before we jump into our topic, Hermence, I want you to be able to talk a little about your journey, but I want to make sure everyone kind of knows your kind of what you do in the world and your title. So you're a founder and CEO of Ubuntu Speaks. And you've got both a master's in public health and a doctorate. Is that right?
I have a master's in public health and also a certificate in adult education. So
wonderful. Fantastic. Well, so tell us a little about your journey and what you do today, and then we can dive into this great conversation around cross-cultural communication.
Okay, great. So, yes, my journey, starts really, I tell people, in a small village in Central Africa, a country named Gabon. So my father was a Peace Corps volunteer, and he served in Gabon, and that's where he met my mother. And, for anyone who knows about Peace Corps, it's all about trying to master the art of cross-cultural communication. And so although my father didn't speak French, he met my mother who helped him learn. and they came together and fell in love, and I'm the product of that. And so eventually, after his service and spending some time in Gabon, moved to the United States, and this is where I've been raised. However, because culture and knowing the world was so important to my family, I spent a lot of my time growing up traveling to all different types of, places. And so for me, that stayed within me. So I too became a Peace Corps volunteer, served in 3 different countries, Togo, Jamaica, and St. Lucia. On my own, I spun the globe. I landed on Ecuador when I was in college. I was tired of the monotony of just being in college. And I wanted something new. And so my finger landed on Ecuador. I didn't speak Spanish, but I figured why not? So I went to Ecuador for a year and learned how to speak Spanish and worked in a small community off the coast of Ecuador called Muisni. And I learned how to reforestate and plant trees and do a little literacy training and teaching. And from there on, my life has really been about learning about new cultures, learning how to communicate, learning where I fit in the global perspective of things, but at the same time providing my assistance, which is health, for the most part, public health. And I came to realize that it doesn't matter what expertise you have if you don't know how to communicate with people, where they are in the language that they understand, in the nonverbal gestures that they understand. If you don't know how to communicate with people, everything is lost. And so that became my mission, to help people find better ways to communicate, especially across cultures.
Well,
so that's what I'm doing now with Ubuntu Speaks.
That's fantastic. And how many languages do you speak?
3. I speak 3 fluently, and I'm working on a couple others, but I speak through 3
How cool.
fluently.
How cool.
French, Spanish, and English.
So, okay, so let's dive into this idea of cross-cultural communication. Now, right before our show, I said intercultural communication, and then you quickly educated me on the difference. So for our listeners, let's talk about what the difference is between intercultural communication and cross-cultural communication.
Okay.
And then we can dive into cross-cultural.
Right. So okay. And it's just slight differences. So when you think of cross-cultural communication, a lot of times you're thinking of people who, you're an American, and then let's say you go to Asia. And so you have like left your home and you're going to Asia and you're learning a new culture, different from your own. It's just, that's the cross piece of it, right? Yep. And you might be the only one there. So you're learning new customs, new ways, right? And usually that's what people think of when they think of cross-cultural communication. Intercultural communication is the communication that happens where people identify as the same. Mm-hmm. However, within that culture, there are silos, there are various different cultures within that one identified, like the American culture, for example.
Yeah, totally.
Right? We can say, to foreigners, or they look at the United States or the Americas like, oh, that's the American culture. But within the American culture, we have different cultures. So we intercultures and how people but within the same culture interact differently. So that's really the differences.
Yeah. And both can be challenging.
Very challenging, very challenging. And so, I always tell people it's understanding. Once you're able to understand what cross-cultural communication is, then you can more easily dive into the nuances that exist within your own. Because you realize that, cross-cultural or cultural communication in essence is just how do you communicate with someone who you perceive as being different or from a different culture that have different perspectives or different values. That's really what it is. And how do you do so effectively?
Now you've got a book coming out around this.
I do. So the name of my book is The Stranger Only Sees What He Knows. And it's the 10 effective strategies to avoiding the pitfalls that exist within cross-cultural communication. So, if you only know a certain way and have been raised a certain way and speak a certain language, when you are placed in a different culture, you're only going to behave in the way that you know. And therefore you are going to have struggles and challenges. Absolutely. And so hence the title, A Stranger Only Knows What He Sees What He knows.
I would love, if you are okay with it, I would love for our conversation today for you to give us a little bit of a tease into that book and maybe share with us a few strategies, if that's okay.
Yes. So, for example, going back, I always start off with nonverbals. So before a conversation even happens, we get the sense of where it might go based on people's nonverbals, how people approach you, if they're smiling when they approach you, if they're aggressive, if they look, that in itself, in most cultures, is the beginning of a conversation. So in my book, I dive into, this idea that communication is not just words. It is very much how we perceive the nonverbals first, before a word even comes out. And so yes?
Of all the places you've been, was there any particular country or culture that you were in where it was just almost a different set of norms around nonverbals?
Yes. Very much. My first Peace Corps experience in Togo, West Africa. So I went in thinking, my mother's African. I'm African, it's Africa. Like, I should know this, right? And, there are 54 some countries in Africa and counting almost. And so my assumption that Togo, because it was in Africa, would be similar to what I know was completely blown out of the water. So the gender norms in a lot of countries really dictate how people communicate, especially non-verbally. And so one of the things is, when I got into the community that I was assigned to, not only was it was predominantly Muslim, so it was a religion different than my own, but the gender norms. So I came in as an American wearing my jeans, and just ready to work. And I didn't realize until later when 3 older women stopped me, and one of them says, it's nice to have a man working with our girls, because I was there for girls' education and empowerment. And I was like, a man? I was like, I'm not a man. They were like, yes, you are. I'm like, no, I'm not. They were like, you're wearing jeans. You're wearing jeans. You don't have a what they called a wrap, which was like a dress, the particular dress. And then and they were like, you're wearing sneakers. You're a man. Just those little tiny things indicated that I was not a woman. And, and then afterwards, I was like, wow, this is like a year later. I was like, this whole time people have been thinking I was just this great man choosing to uplift women in the community. So, that's just a funny story to show you that they never had a conversation with me, but because of the way I looked, my behavior, the way I carried myself, that I was of another gender, and therefore I was being treated that way. So, wow. Yeah.
Okay, so I totally get where we're going with this with the nonverbals. I totally do. Is there a way that we can better identify those? I mean, is there any cues or tips that we can use?
In my book, I talk about the importance of asking questions. A lot of times we fear making a mistake or offending someone, so we don't ask. But when we don't ask, we continue with that feeling, with that perception, and we never get the answers we need to better communicate, to better interact with the other person. So I talk about the importance of being honest in your questioning. And it can be simple as, I don't know, but I want to know. Why do you, and why is it that? Just starting a conversation with that phrase of, a place of not knowing but wanting to know. So I also talk about the importance of realizing that your stereotypes might be founded in illusions, and founded in how others perceived someone else or a particular population, a particular community. And so that is not factual. So a lot of times the stereotypes we hold, we really believe they're factual, and we act towards others in that manner. So it's about realizing that that's what it is. It's just your perception or your illusion of something or someone, and another tip that I give also is just respecting the differences. I'm one of those people, growing up, I hated the word different. And I think it was simply because I was, as a child, trying to figure out, was I African? Was I American? Was I African-American? Or was I just Black? Or was I, trying to figure out where I fit, because I was living one culture at school with my friends, living another culture at home, and then and then enjoying the various different cultures I was learning. And so for me, instead of different, I would always say, what is unique about this person? What is unique about this situation? So respecting the uniqueness in people and respecting the uniqueness in various different cultures. So instead of saying, oh, that's so different from me, I'm saying, oh, how unique is that? And so I speak about embracing the uniqueness in other people, the uniqueness in the cultures that, different cultures.
And I love that underneath all this, there seems to be this big, strong theme of curiosity.
Yes.
Just getting curious and asking people.
Yeah.
What's it? I want to know, I want to learn more, or
Exactly.
and looking at their difference as uniqueness and being
Right.
curious about it and trying to
Right.
understand, and even being
Yeah.
curious about yourself and challenging your own perceptions and stereotypes that you hold.
Exactly. Exactly. And having that be part of your being, your lifestyle carries over in your work. Because as we're globally connected. Businesses are relying on that interconnectivity of other businesses around the world. And so businesses are no longer in silos. It's not like the clients you have only exist in your town. And with
Yeah.
technology and with everything, we are able to reach the farthest corners of the world and provide them services. So I talk about the importance of knowing your client's cultural background and values and perceptions. And so if you have a workforce who understands the importance of cross-cultural communication, who values the uniqueness that exists in other, they will better present your product. They will better serve your clients. And your clients will be faithful to you and your brand because they feel as though you know them or you're trying to know them. And when I think of just being an American overseas, oftentimes, Americans don't always carry a great name. When it comes to the respect. So a lot of Americans, will go to a country, rightfully so, and then when you walk into a room, you don't just right off start business. It's not like, okay, we're having a meeting, let's get to it.
So this is exactly what I want to ask you about. So we're about to go into break, but we come back from break. I want to ask you about all the ways that we as Americans mess this up. Because I'm sure there are plenty.
Okay.
So,
all right.
so let's go into our break. We come back and then we can learn about all the ways we screw this up so we can get a little bit smarter.
Okay,
all right.
Great.
All right, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for listening to the show. In case you haven't heard, Brandon's got a new book out. He's going to tell you all about it.
Thanks, Emily. So the book is The Hot Sauce Principle, How to Live and Lead in a World Where Everything is Urgent All the Time. And if you're like me, and like most of us, everything does feel urgent all the time. It's like hot sauce is being poured on everything, whether it's our work life, our family life, coming from our clients, coming from our boss. And so the book is a practical guide on how do we manage urgency. Not only how do we set proper boundaries, but how do we properly create urgency when we need to. So I wrote the book for you. I can't wait for you to get a copy.
Thanks, Brandon. Don't forget to check out The Hot Sauce Principle, available now on Amazon.com. Back to the show.
Welcome back from break. Of course, this is the Workplace Therapist Show. And right before our break, we were talking about, Hermence was sharing with us about cross-cultural communication and some of the challenges around that. And then I posed this question to her that I'm really curious about. As Americans, how do we screw this up when we go into either we're interacting virtually or we're traveling and we're going into other cultures? What are some of the things that we do that we probably shouldn't, that give us kind of a bad rap? So Hermence, what are some of those things that you notice that Americans do that we should stop doing?
One of the things is that we don't value interpersonal communication. And interpersonal meaning you come into a room, you're on a virtual call, you get into a meeting and simply saying, hello, everyone, how are you doing? And waiting for the answer. Not saying hello and asking how you're doing just because it's, that's what you say, but actually wanting to know how someone is feeling. And in a lot of cultures, before a meeting ever starts, you have to ask, how are you doing? How's the family? There's that conversation piece that happens where it's all about greeting someone and meeting someone where they are at that day and hoping and wishing them well. No conversation. No, in other cultures, the idea of just coming in and starting work immediately is like rude. It's just right off rude. So really, as Americans, learning the importance of greetings, the importance of interpersonal communication, and that means valuing someone and showing them that you care right off the bat, that you're not just there to like make money.
So have you noticed that there are some cultures that you've experienced or interacted with where that's a long dating period? Like you almost need to spend a lot of time building a relationship before you can get down to business?
Yes, very much so. Because a lot of, in this field, really, it's broken down between high context cultures and low context cultures. And so the United States and Western Europe are considered low context cultures, where, especially when it comes to business, because it's decisions are made on facts. And so it's individualistic, it's very direct, and it's on facts. So it's like, today, this is what we have planned. This is what the outcome should be. This is the information. So that's just how it works. It's very direct. Whereas the majority of the rest of the world is on high context culture. And that is like, countries in Asia, in Africa, and South America, where it's about trust. So there's that building of trust. In order for people to give you the information you need or want to accomplish something, they have to trust you. And they have to see you as being part of their community. So it's a very, it's very collective, and it's community-based, and it really thrives on the community, the relationship that you have built. So yeah, it could be seen as like a long dating process in some places. Like, I'm not going to provide you and tell you all about who I am, how much I make, and what my problems and challenges if I don't trust you. And so that's where the clashes often happen, where you have, individuals, us from, a low context culture, interacting or doing business with someone of a high context culture. And I'm thinking, I just want to get things done, get the end product, make the money, and serve you. Whereas they're thinking, I need to know if I really can trust you with this information, if you're really going to serve us.
So here's a really big question. Yes. And I'm going to put it out there anyway, just because. How do you build trust in those situations? How do you speed that up or accelerate that? Other than just, years with the person.
Okay, what you do is, the first thing you do is find out what the culture is all about. Do your homework before you interact with them. History, do your homework, and don't assume that don't assume that they think that just because you're an American, you're the best thing for them.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. So do your homework, and then you find someone who can be that intermediate person, that person in the middle who can help facilitate the conversation, who can help facilitate that trust. And it's usually a person who's lived in both worlds, who is familiar with both cultures. Find someone who can be your interpreter to some extent, and that you can ask open, questions, and that can help you build that sense of confidence in order to be able to better interact. And then 3, I think, is just dropping the ego. I really do think that's a big one. I know I had to learn to do so. And when I say drop the ego, that means realizing that other cultures and other people have a lot to offer, and you can learn from them too. Yeah, so those are definitely 3 ways that I would recommend, when it comes to building that trust in order to really effectively do business or work with someone from a different culture.
Yeah, that's
and
beautiful. Understand
that it's not just language is in most cultures is not just verbal, as we said before. There's other contexts, other factors that exist, that nuances that you have to pay attention to.
So are there any other things you see Americans do when they're whether they're just traveling for leisure or they're doing work, that you say, oh yeah, they should not do that. That's not good.
Well, I think I'm big on languages. As we said earlier, for me, I speak 3 languages and I understand the power of languages. And even if the language is the same, because I know when I spent some time in England, in London, they knew right off the bat that I was American. Not, of course, my accent, but also because of the vocabulary I used. And to some British, it was just the most annoying thing. Certain words were like, oh, that's not English, And so realizing that there are differences even within the same language. But also, I feel like as Americans, we do need to make an effort in learning other languages. In other countries, in other parts of the world, children grow up learning how to speak English. And they do so because they realize that now the business is conducted and work and everything, and it's an asset. I feel like as Americans, we need to also see learning other languages as an asset so that we can better communicate and express ourselves without having someone in the middle, and it also shows respect. It shows that at least you're trying. So that's one thing I would really encourage people to do is learn a language. And then, also I think before, traveling abroad, find someone here in the United States who is from that culture. Build relationships with people here, and don't just assume, like you don't have Asian friends, but you're going to go to Asia and assume that, things are fine. And then also realize that those friends that you have here who may be from those various different cultures, they too are somewhat removed from what it is outside of the United States. And so it's really important to just build, I say, a community that's diverse. If you really want to show that as an American, that you are interested and understand the importance of cultural competence.
I think you made some great points of things we can do while we're right here. You're learning other languages, meeting people from other countries that are here, learning about those cultures.
History,
doing our research.
Yeah,
absolutely. Wow, great.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've got a few minutes left.
Okay.
Any other final points that you would want to make sure we talk about today as it relates to cross-cultural communication?
I think also, bringing it back into the workforce, I do want people to understand that it's not a one-time thing, and it's it's something that's going to take time. So don't be hard on yourself if you do make a mistake. If you do, end up, making a pitfall, and communicating, but being open to acknowledging the fact that you don't know is really important, and minimizing the microaggressions that happen in the workplace, and managing the patterns of cultural differences. And so that means realizing what is visible and what is not visible. So what is visible oftentimes is your own communication style, how someone else communicates. Are they someone who, use interpersonal communication? Are they someone who just rightfully comes and, they don't say hello, they just speak off the cuff? Or are they touchy-feely? Are they, do they like their space? So all those things are things that are visible that you can observe. But realize that a big part, it's like that iceberg. You see the tip, and then underneath the iceberg is really huge on the bottom, right? Or like the tree, the baobab tree, and then the roots are so deep. That's the invisible piece of culture that needs to be managed. And oftentimes those are the perceptions, the beliefs, how people have been raised, the assumptions that they have. Those are the things that really drive their communication, their behaviors, and how they interact with you. And so realizing that you may not know the roots of it, but if you're you're honest in your questioning, you respect the uniqueness, and you show that you really want to learn, you can really uncover those roots to better assist you with the relationship you have with either your coworker or your clients or whomever.
And I can see how that would be even more critical in intercultural communication.
Exactly.
Because you assume, oh, everybody's like me because we're all here in the same place.
Exactly. We all speak the same language. This person might have
grown up with a different religion or
right.
parents from another country, and they've got different ideas of what's right or wrong.
Exactly. Or family structure, for example, And so those times where you make those little tiny jokes and then someone, is a little offended, and you don't understand why they're offended, it might be because you have just touched a part of them that they've kept hidden, or that you don't know, those roots. So to be mindful of that.
But this is absolutely great. So I ask all my guests this question. What's one life hack you might have for us on how we can have either better conversations or build better relationships, whether personally or professionally?
Be open to having difficult conversations. And be open to having difficult conversations, knowing that some hurt might come with it. But if you continue the process, the healing will eventually come.
I think that's an important point, because most people say, well, how can I have the difficult conversations without any hurt?
Yeah.
You might not be able to.
No.
But you grow through that.
You grow through that, and you heal through that. And you become a better person. And so that's, and that's the essence of Ubuntu, which is the South African philosophy of human interconnectedness, and what my company is based on. This idea that you have to see humanity in each other, and that we are all interconnected. And it's when we respect, value, and give space and voice, and allow people to voice who they are, that we can better work together. But that often means coming together and having those difficult conversations, and realizing that, we will get hurt, and people will get upset, and people will not understand in the beginning, and some may never understand. However, you put yourself and who you are in the forefront, and then you made an effort to be better. And so that's really, for me, the best advice I can give is just be open to that, and realize there's so much growth in those difficult conversations.
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, when I think about our conversation today, I think about things like curiosity, humility, intentionality. All those are kind of ways we can walk in the world that will make things better.
Especially now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Well, Hermence, this was absolutely great. If people want to learn more about you and the work you do, where can they go?
They can go on my website. So it's www.ubuntu, workforce.com. They can also, and that is, more of a US base. And for global, it's www.ubuntu, but as speaks, SPEAKS, LLC.com. So you can go there. I'm also on LinkedIn and Facebook, and LinkedIn is just my name, Hermence Matsotsa. And on Facebook, it's ubuntuspeaks.com.
And I know your book is going to be out at some point. Do you have an idea of when it might be?
From what I'm hoping and striving for is by January 1st, 2021. So
beautiful.
Yes, beautiful. So I'm working hard on that. I look forward to really just sharing more nuggets with everybody through this book.
I think that's great. Well, thank you for coming on the show, and thank you for listening and watching the show. Of course, continue to rate, review, subscribe to the show so more folks can learn about the work we're doing on the show, and put more folks in our tribe so we can make our conversations and relationships at work that much better. And if you want additional resources, you can go to theworkplacetherapist.com for blogs, past shows, and if you haven't bought a copy of my new book, The Hot Sauce Principle, please buy a copy. I love the
title.
Thank you, Hermence. Please buy a copy. It's out and available right now, and it's all about how you live and lead in a world where everything is urgent all the time. So until our next show, have a great week and an awesome life, everybody.
Thank you. Take care,
Bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.